All right, Drake and I are back here for round 3 at NRG Gaming, our team trial, Modern, Legacy, and Pioneer. The players are ready to go. So we're going to start with, what did we say, Pioneer this
We
round.
said Pioneer. We got some
Pioneer.
two sweet decks, Joe. Some
Yeah,
good ones
yeah,
to
we
look at
do.
here.
We've got, well, let's go ahead. The players are waiting for us. Let's go ahead and go down to the table right now, and we can get things rolling. We see the Mardu Greasefang versus Azorius Control, if that proves to be correct. If we see those things get
Is it prowess
adjusted or not. Well, it's always fun when we start these rounds to see, how things got attributed, whether it's correct or not. And I
looks like
I don't even think the teams are listed correctly at this point.
It's hard to tell. It looks like it might just be reversed here. So it looks like it is it prowess, as we started with a Steam Vents into a Soulscar Mage, and then the Mardu Greasefang deck is here on the left as we start with the Voldaran Epicure. Going to go ahead and make a blood token.
All right, so this Mardu Greasefang deck is something we briefly talked about in the opening about one of the Pioneer decks, where this is kind of one of those small creatures, and then with a strong, kind of like all-in trump turn. And oh, wait, we'll delay that for a second. I get to mark the first card on the list.
Yes. Yay, the first checklist card, Joe. I'm so proud of you. Ledger Shredder, one that we did allude to seeing some this weekend. The hot new spice from Nuka Penna, going to go ahead and come down here and threaten to make basically make a loot and potentially a counter here as early as turn 2. As we're going to crack the blood token. Parhelion, the discard. I think that's the way we drew it up. Another card coming here for Robert Taylor. Fire Shoes on Twitter. Going to shock in Godless Shrine. And here's Stitcher Supplier. 2 actions, not 2 spells. No loot for you.
So if you're unfamiliar with Pioneer or this Greasefang deck, the combo is to get Greasefang into play and Parhelion into the graveyard. Step 1 is done. Parhelion, maybe we can pop that up. Parhelion 2, I believe, is actually the name.
Correct.
Is there a Parhelion 1?
I think in the lore there is, but there's no card for it, Joe.
Sure. Okay.
Sorry to disappoint. No Parhelion Tribal for you.
Yeah. So Parhelion 2, an 8-mana vehicle, but Greasefang is a 3-drop that will cheat that into play from the graveyard just for 1 turn. But as you can read, 1 turn is often enough to make a significant impact on the board, as Greasefang does give haste and crew up the Parhelion and send it in and create 2 angels. So
we'll 4 power being able to crew it and crash in for, I believe the number is 13 damage.
Yeah,
it's a lot of damage, and you get to keep the angels to boot. So that's a 2-turn clock. Very powerful combo in the Pioneer format. And we'll see if we can get that started here on turn 3. A lot of pressure, I think, from Jesse here to kind of threaten Robert's life total. And we are going to see an attack that kind of represents that, even though we're attacking to a Stitcher Supplier. That never feels good, giving more cards in the yard. Parhelion's already in the graveyard.
Yeah.
And Stitcher Supplier is going to get in. I'm sorry.
That's the big thing, right, in this deck. It's not like we have multitudes of graveyard interactions. It's like, just get Parhelion in the graveyard. That's already done. So I think killing Stitcher Supplier is not as, fearsome as it would be if there wasn't one already in the graveyard.
Well, we do see a Greasefang milled over. That does matter for this Mardu list here, as there's a card called Can't Stay Away that acts as a copy of Unearth. Will be able to reanimate the Greasefang to then, of course, reanimate the Parhelion and get everything out of the graveyard. So definitely still a hit. I believe there's a copy of Cruxa in the list as well. So we have a couple other graveyard interactions going on here in this Mardu deck, as looking to tap 2 mana here and maybe sacrifice the Voldaran Epicure for a Deadly Dispute.
Deadly Dispute, sack something, draw 2 cards, and make a treasure, which means that this turn isn't necessarily over for Robert Taylor.
Now remember, if you do play another spell from here, that Ledger Shredder is going to loot again. It does count both players. Jesse did manage to trigger it using the Monastery Swift Spear and Opt on the previous turn.
Yeah, playing paper versus playing online, Ledger Shredder triggers, can be missed in this reality, whereas they can't online. And here we have...
This looks like a Can't Stay Away.
Yeah.
And Jesse's done. Absolutely not. I can't beat that. Parhelion, no thank you.
Jesse's at 13, so actually it's not even a matter of...
literally lethal right there. Wow.
Okay, so to kind of recap what happens there, as that was quick. So yeah, Greasefang, if we can bring that up on the screen. I know we had it up there briefly, but Greasefang gets reanimated, is 4/3. It says, okay, beginning of combat, let's put a vehicle from the graveyard into play, and it gains haste. Parhelion comes into play, 5/5. Attacks, makes 2 4/4 flyers, and as Drake surmised, that is 13, and that was Jesse's life total. So that's an attack for 13 right out of nowhere, and that gets it done. Okay,
it
so
just gets the game over with. So powerful.
I mean, you didn't sound like you had a lot of respect for this deck, but when it works,
it works.
It works.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and drop down to Zoe Riederman's match, which is probably the modern seat, and we see Living End again. No surprise versus Jund. Okay. Now we do know this Jund deck picked up a new card from Streets of New Capenna, which will be relevant in this matchup.
Absolutely. And this is old foes, new cards here, Joe. A lot of channel cards that the Living End deck has picked up. We saw Zoe have a impressive finish. I believe it was a top 4 previously, it just playing a individual modern event. So she is somewhat of an expert on the deck at this point in time, and certainly is going to run that back, looking for a similar result at the minimum. And of course, Jund versus Living End, like I said, something that's been around for a while. But Jund, as you mentioned, has some new cards as well, some of which even from New Capenna. I believe we are going to see some maybe charms, maybe some triomes, and all that stuff that they have available to them. We could see in this game. As here comes Shardless Agent.
Well, we know what that finds. It's going to find the Living End.
Could be anything.
And so the new card, Riveter's Charm. If we can bring that up as Zoe's flipping through the deck, looking for the Living End. Riveter's Charm is a new red, green, black instant. One of the modes is Wipe the Graveyard, which would be fairly useful against Living End. However, with 1 mana open, that does not seem to be forthcoming from David Pound. And so instead, well, he's going to lose his Tarmogoyf.
Nice foil Tarmogoyf, it looks like.
Yeah, well,
but that one's still going to go to graveyard.
Now, if it was just lose Tarmogoyf, okay, that might be survivable. But not only, and he actually gets Dragon Rage Channeler back.
Oh, there we go. It's got a lot of blocking to do.
Yeah,
it looks like there may be a lot of blocking to do.
So he's going to casually add around somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 power to the board and take a card from David's hand.
More than one. I think there's multiple. Is there multiple griefs or those street rates?
I'm not sure.
I think there's 2 griefs. Oh, we're going to go ahead and bolt one. Go ahead and take care of that. Brazen Borrower, maybe. There's a Surveil first. All right, keep that one on top. That's a damnation. And here goes Brazen Borrower to the graveyard. And it looks like the new triome there, the Z, it says something with a Z, Proving Ground.
Oh, it's Zayatora?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zayatora's Proving Ground. All right.
That's on camera. That's right there, Joe. You got 2 ticks on the checklist. There we go. All right, here comes that card that we do know about. David Pound taking a look. Not sure what it could be. It looks like it was a Riveter's Charm, but that's not going to be good enough. Sacrificing 1 creature, you're still dead on board at 14. And of course, the street race can't even be blocked. So that's going to do it for game 1 here in the modern seat. As we saw,
even better. Swamp Walk actually relevant. What a boost. All right. So we got 2 games kind of
fast.
Domineering.
Quick magic, Joe. Yeah, we got places to be. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Tarmogoyf could not hold the fork down against the entire board. All right. Pioneer just threw their opening hands. Let's go back down to it. See if we can have a repeat performance from Robert Taylor, or if Jesse Robkin can try and keep the 13 power off the board, as it's always going to be 13 power, right? So it's always going to be the same thing for
right. Well, if you count the Greasefang, that's additionally 4 power, but the power healing goes away. The math's a little funky. You get hit for 13.
Yeah,
that's the first connection. And, of course, Jesse, playing an Izzet deck, you have to imagine that she's going to have access to some counter magic in the sideboard games here and some additional removal spells. Now that she knows the matchup, now that she knows has access to the sideboard cards, I imagine the texture of these sideboard games is going to look very different from the just unanswered Greasefang on turn 3 in game 1.
Right. Now, Greasefang being a 4/3, I mean, it is something that can be picked off pre-combat when it's in play, and thus avoiding this Parhelion nonsense.
Correct.
But yeah, something like Ledger Shredder and, some kind of smallish, aggro, evasive, conniving, get a little card advantage going. That's great and everything. But if it can just if the way to deal with Greasefang isn't there, it's not going to matter. As when Robert Taylor does his thing, if it works, Jesse's not going to be able to stand up to it. So yeah, needs to have.
This is not one of those decks that's going to battle through the 4/4 Angels very well.
Right,
Being it is a deck, you just don't have great removal spells for a 4/4 Flying Angel token, especially not two of them, and that have.
Right. I mean, most decks don't. I mean,
right. True.
Yeah, especially when they all have haste.
Yeah, I mean,
this is not tap 5 mana for a 4/4 vigilance creature.
We've come a long way from Sarah Angels,
This
Joe.
is brutal.
Back in your days.
So let's see. It looks like both players took 1 mulligan here.
Robert Taylor considering. Looks like Voldaren Epicure, Inspiring Vantage among the cards.
Yeah, Voldaren Epicure. Boy, that I didn't even think. It took me a while to even accept that as a marginal playable and limited. And
yeah, I don't get it either, Joe. It's apparently powerful. It's not my kind of card. I like my expressive iterations and blue and red cards, and that's a red card that I don't vibe with. What is it? Just makes a bunch of stuff. Like here's some game objects. So here comes the black side of the black-red pathway. I don't know the names that well. As here comes Stitcher's Supplier. Looks like somewhat of a whiff. Just some 1 mana cards among the bunch. No Parhelions here. And Unlicensed Hearse on turn 2. New Capenna card, Joe. Yeah, there we go.
On the list. Unlicensed Hearse is a vehicle. Unlike Voldaren Epicure, this is a strong limited card.
I believe that.
2 mana to play.
We can see that one.
2 to crew, and its size is the number of cards that it gets exiled to it from graveyards, which it can do by tapping and pick off 2 a turn. This is going to make it much harder for Robert Taylor to do the Parhelion thing.
Looks like it's literally going to eat the cards as Robert Taylor just going to go ahead and put those directly under the licensors. Make it easy to track. Makes sense. Here comes Ledger Shredder as a follow-up, a very solid follow-up, and a removal spell to be the second spell there. Going to go ahead and cause a loot.
All right. So yeah. And I actually wondered going into, I was like, I wonder if Drake and 10 are going to say loot or connive on Ledger Shredder, because it is looting, right? I mean, that's what we think.
Yeah, but okay, if you discard spells, it's suddenly connive and it gets counters. Yeah. Come on, we all know what a loot is.
Right.
Fine, it will connive.
But I'm fine with either way. You say one, we know what you mean. So Ledger Shredder on the board, and maybe it'll trigger multiple times during this game, and if it can trigger actually, as long as the Parhelion thing isn't happening, it doesn't need any counters to be the biggest thing on the board. There are not.
That's very true.
I mean, Robert's got his couple sister suppliers here. That's not going to do much.
Those little 1/1s not really going to hold their own, although they do a good job blocking. Once again, we saw kind of the threat that Stitcher Supplier is as a blocker. Obviously not really threatening to trade, but instead threatening to move cards around and graveyard the necessary cards to accomplish the combo. And we see a Parhelion is currently in the sideboard, or I'm sorry, in the graveyard, but that one's going to go ahead and get taken care of right away from this Unlicensed Hearse. No shenanigans from you. Thank you.
All right. So iterations on the stack, iterations in hand.
Looks like not really interested in the Reckless Impulse. That one's going to get out of here. Here comes a Consider. Here comes a Connive. Going to go ahead and discard a Sprite Dragon. That'll put a counter on the Ledger Shredder. Very quickly going to accomplish that. Surveil. Going to graveyard a Treasure Cruise and draw another card. Looks like Otawara is the pickup there. And I'm going to play that as the land for turn and come across for 2.
All right.
So Jesse, looking to be a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, that's great and everything. Without the Unlicensed Hearse, this would still just be, inconsequential compared to the Greasefang combo. But with the Unlicensed Hearse, now this Ledger Shredder creates a clock, and that Hearse, I mean, if Robert can't pick off that Hearse, and you know what? He's got to pick it off and then mill a Parhelion, because if you do it in the reverse order, like the one that's already in there, that Hearse is just gonna eat them up. And then I suppose eventually, I don't know, is there a point where the Unlicensed Hearse actually starts attacking? Or is it
I definitely think so. I mean, It kind of looks like Robert kind of trying to establish just like a board presence here. Like we have Greasefang that has entered the battlefield naked, but now that represents the inability for Jesse to attack with the Unlicensed Hearse, right? Because if you attack with it, it's tapped. You can't exile cards with it anymore. And then suddenly Robert has a window to put a Parhelion in the graveyard and reanimate it. So kind of Greasefang is able to kind of hold back this hearse, and that's why we saw that attack with the Stitcher Supplier there, not really threatening to block the hearse anymore because, you know, it's free damage and you can't block the Ledger Shredder anyway. So a little bit back and forth, some tight play, and kind of a little bit more going on the battlefield than you would suspect just looking at power and toughnesses of the cards in play here.
All right, so Ledger Shredder causing the first one to connive. Is it going to grow this time? It is. Swift Spear gets tossed, and okay.
Just one of them, as the other Ledger Shredder is on the stack at the time of that connive happening. So that is. Oh wait, no. Does it check other connives, or does it check its own individually? Well, let's get a look at Ledger Shredder. I want to read the text on connive.
Yeah, so it's only going to be. It's only refer to itself. It's not going to get a
it doesn't check to see if a connive happens. Discard card. If you discarded a non-land card, okay, yeah, it checks for that ability resolving. Yeah. Okay, I thought that like maybe there's a chance you could grow both. That would probably be ridiculous. I only ever really see one Ledger Shredder in play. Two is just going to move through cards at a ridiculous rate, and of course that it'll trigger on Robert's turn too. So Robert's kind of in the squeeze now that, you know, if he plays a bunch of different spells on his turn, then Jesse's going to grow her Ledger Shredders and make them huge and loot through the whole deck to find all the counter spells and the good sideboard cards, and you definitely don't want that. So now it's kind of like a weird rule of law that's attacking you.
Right. So Greasefang comes across here, and yeah, Robert adds a Stitcher Supplier to the board for the turn. Like, that's not very relevant right now, and yeah, kind of can't play a second card.
Honestly, it's almost like a downside. Yeah. The hearse gets bigger.
Yeah, so due to the grouping of blockers on Robert's side, yeah, this hearse is probably going to be, is going to be staying on defense, or at least on graveyard defense, as Jesse's going to clear out her own graveyard here and benefit three cards.
With, 2 cards that connive, Joe.
Not a card that gets, not a card that I've cast in quite some time now, as it has been banned out of several formats, but
it's pretty good with Ledger Shredder for sure. Ledger Shredder filling up the graveyard. Treasure Cruise giving you more cards to trigger the Ledger Shredders more often. I would call this a synergy. Good deck building here, as we're going to see 2 lands gone to the graveyard. I think if you're Robert, you want to be excited about that because you're not being attacked for more damage. That probably means Jesse's hand is just literally all spells, right? Like, you have to just be in a little bit of trouble because literally Jesse's just sitting on a pile of spells if she's just looting lands to the graveyard like crazy.
Yeah, and Robert's got, needs help here. He's got a Parhelion in hand, so if the Unlicensed Hearse gets picked off, he's ready to go. And I think on the bottom of the screen, partially covered up by the overlay, I think there's a blood token, so
can do it at instant speed. But that hearse needs to be either tapped or destroyed in order to make that happen. So we'll see what Robert can assemble. All right. Gonna discard a Parhelion to the blood token, draw a card.
Okay, there's another Parhelion in hand, I think. Now, is Greasefang going to target in the graveyard? I imagine it would, but maybe not.
I think Greasefang says target. You do have to select a target with
bring up Greasefang again and see if this is something that could be dodged by type play and another extra blood token.
Yeah, if there's like another vehicle. Looks like it may not matter, as it looks like we're before combat. We're going to cast a Reckless Rage here, targeting Soulscar Mage and a Greasefang.
Well, that will be an efficient way to get rid of that. Prowess will trigger, so Soulscar Mage is not going to die to the Reckless Rage. Greasefang, however, will. And unless
to do so, let's get both of those. Can't stay away shenanigans. No, none of what happened in game 1. Put that directly under the hearse. Thank you. Have a nice day. We have a nice funeral procession for that coming up.
Still, this hearse, with these 3 Stitcher Suppliers, this hearse isn't attacking. I think it's just going to have to be one in the air, which Jesse is certainly capable of doing.
Yeah, that's all right. Jesse's got time. We with the hearse basically shutting down kind of everything this Mardu Greasefang deck's trying to accomplish. There's certainly a lot of time, as I believe here comes Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Right. So yeah, Mirror Breaker comes in. It'll generate a token, a non-flying token. So these Ledger Shredders will continue in the air. And this is something that, sure, long-term advantage. I don't know how long-term there actually is here for Robert in this game, as Jesse, I believe, is conniving again with the 2 Ledger Shredders.
with the trigger on the stack to make a token, looks like. This is in the second main, of course. I believe, destroyed that before. That or could be in first main, because I think you have to destroy the Greasefang before you move to combat, because it is at the beginning of the combat the trigger goes on the stack. It may not matter, though, because you can just do it with the trigger on the stack. So either way, we're in one of the main phases. Going to respond to the trigger to make the token with the Reckless Rage. And here comes a Treasure Cruise, a fantastic follow-up to a turn of a bunch of one-mana interaction. Not really sure why Treasure Cruise itself is exiled at this point in time. Oh, it's not. That's the other one. There we go. Bam. Expressive Iteration, also a fine follow-up. Find more of those interaction cards.
These players in these other formats with only expressive iterations, that's not even good enough. Treasure Cruise plus iteration, that's the real stuff. And some I mean, Jesse could fire off another Treasure Cruise this turn easily.
Easily. Yeah, this is ridiculous. You just get to go through your entire deck, find all your Treasure Cruises, and then use them all. And here comes a ton of damage in the air. I believe that'll be 7. Robert suddenly needing to assemble something next turn. Not even going to get to flip this Fable of the Mirror Breaker into the Saga form before we are facing down potentially lethal. It looks like maybe a Den of the Bugbear among the lands too. Just really, Jesse, really demonstrating the power of the new Capenna cards in her deck. I mean, literally have basically dictated the entire pace of this game with Unlicensed Hearse on turn 2, then Ledger Shredder on turn 3, and those cards really kind of making the lion's share of the interactive impact on this game.
Yeah, Unlicensed Hearse showing up in all formats. It was even in the Legacy, in the top 8 of the Legacy event on Magic Online last weekend.
Some powerful cards, Joe.
In the Slivers deck, of all things. Unlicensed Hearse, so strong, it carried Slivers to the top 8 of an event.
Sure about some meat hooks, Joe.
All right, so there is another Parhelion, as well as Sky Sovereign. Sky Sovereign Console Flagship, right? That's the name.
That is the full name of that card.
Sky Sovereign Console Flagship. Yeah. Okay, so that's like the backup. That's like the 5th Parhelion.
Correct. You can actually hardcast that one, so you know, just a little extra love in case your Parhelions get like Unmoored Egoed or whatever. You need something else to do that's powerful. In this case, it's just a mostly dead card. Although it would be a nice one. It does fly, so you could potentially pick off like the Soulscar Mage or whatever and threaten to block. But given that Robert is at 2, even that's not really good enough. As we're fanning through a bunch of options, can't stay away, and a pile of lands appears to be the mixture available here.
Yeah, Jesse's probably wondering, what do you even have that you're thinking about here that you're not just dead?
What is the possible sequence? Yeah, Unlicensed Hearse still untapped, and 2 different lethal threats in the air. It looks like Robert has come to the same conclusion. We're going to move to game 3. We got to see kind of both decks really do their thing, and we'll see if there's any sideboard adjustments or modifications that can be made to see the result of this match. See if who can really come out on top there. Yeah, some cool stuff in Pioneer. Some 2 really cool decks, both of which I think are kind of still in development. We're seeing, I think Greasefang decks used to be Esper. Now we're seeing like a Mardu take on it. And then Is It Prowess? Typically we've seen Phoenix decks now suddenly eschewing the Phoenix Thing in the Ice stuff and maybe reaching for the Prowess creatures again with the power of Ledger Shredder and then Unlicensed Hearse as a graveyard option. So really cool to see a lot of this iteration happening here.
I mean, if Unlicensed Hearse becomes a common sideboard card, these Greasefang, or it already is, these Greasefang decks, like, there needs to be answers. I mean, that wasn't a short game and nothing showed up. Now, maybe that's just the way it is, but Robert definitely needs tools to defeat that. We're going to go. All right. So we have 3 formats playing as part of our team event. And all 3 are between games right now.
Perfect.
Players are not
good Magic being played. Quick Magic, shuffling up. And, ready to go again. So it's awesome that we see this tight competitive play happening here. But unfortunately, it means we don't have Magic to look at this moment.
Okay. Well, and a further update from the table is that all 3 players were shuffling because the match ended. So
awesome. Can we get confirmation on who won?
We'll see what actually happened there. In the meantime, you all can admire Drake's trying out a new look. Screen. No ears.
Not using them. I have ears. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I have
with his.
I have a single ear. I look like an elf when that happens. Yeah, I have a green screen. I'm in the process of renovating my house here, And so as a result, you get to see my beautiful virtual office. Looks like Zach and Zoe both won their matches. So Zoe Riederman's team going to emerge victorious here. Impressive stuff. Good work.